A bit over 10 days ago, the overwhelming majority of the ethnic British population were paying respects to the Queen with some dignity and solemnity, doing this. And meanwhile, with equal dignity and solemnity, the Muslim population and the Hindu population of Leicester managed to set fire to a fruit and veg store and were having a watermelon fight in it. And did you see how the policemen and the firemen were trying to separate them to protect them from themselves, putting them in harm's way to protect Muslims and Hindus from themselves? And yes, that really was a watermelon fight. Zenat supermarket fire, police probe watermelon fight outside blazing Saltley store, and there are the watermelons to prove it. And how bad would that have gone without the English authorities or the ethnic British authorities intervening to defend Muslims and Hindus from each other? And that's the point I'm making. I've made two videos about why victory will be easy. This is the third one. I was wondering, what was I going to use in order to illustrate how it will be easy to get the invader populations to leave in a consensual way, without civil war, without a lot of bloodshed. And then right on cue, the riots in Leicester come along and make the point for me. And this is the point I want to make, that when society or when the economy breaks down, when different ethnic populations separate out, then what you will find is the conditions within invader areas will become unlivable, intolerable, hellish very fast. And all we will need to do is to allow them to stew in their own juice. And I refer to three things here. The first thing is how everyone in authority, everyone in the state, everyone in the media runs PR cover for the invader populations. The second thing is how serious this violence was and how bad it would have got had the English authorities not been there to separate these people out in order to impose some kind of order. And the third thing is just that it is only the authority of the British, the ethnic British, or I would say English, forces of law and order, which are separating those people, preventing those people from inflicting a hellish war zone upon themselves. When that happens, the conditions of life for them will become unlivable fast. It'll be quite easy to get those people to leave simply by offering them a free aeroplane ticket home. It won't be expensive, it won't involve war. And this is my point. Victory will be easy. This is part 3 of that. Getting the invader populations to leave. Reversing the effects of mass immigration and multiculturalism which have accrued over the last 30 to 70 years. Okay, so point number 1, how all the institutions of authority, how they are pandering and running PR cover for these populations, and how clearly we saw it with these riots that showed nothing but contempt for the English or ethnic British population, rioting at such a sensitive time that they had no concern for the PR effects of what they were doing. And so the British state, the British authorities, they come in and they run PR cover for them. And as if to add to the French farce that is Leicester, I will start by looking at the MP, Claudia Webb. And Claudia Webb, in case you don't know about it, she was convicted of harassment. And this is the story from the BBC. Claudia Webb loses appeal against harassment conviction. And there what it says is the 57-year-old who represents her constituency as an independent after being expelled from Labour made numerous calls to Mrs Merritt, that's her love rival, in a campaign of harassment over the course of 18 months. Her trial heard on one occasion she made an angry call, used a derogatory term, I wonder what that was, and added, "You should be acid." But at appeal they said that was not a threat to throw acid on her love rival. So we seem to have the diversity full house in Leicester, and it has certainly shown over the last few weeks. And then what did Claudia Webb have to say? Well, she blamed it all on the likes of you and me. That's far-right elements. And she tweeted out this one. That was on the 17th of September. I am also aware of far-right elements who are intent on using social media and other online communication to incite religious and racial hatred, deliberately designed to cause fear, alarm and distress, like you were convicted of, and in order to provoke a reaction. And she then went on to say a couple of days later, Claudia Webb, whose Leicester East constituency has been at the centre of several incidents over the past month, said ministers needed to clamp down on extremist right-wing ideology. There you are. So you get rid of the likes of you and me and there will be peace and harmony in Leicester East. Okay. And misinformation being spread through social media. That's The Guardian. Leicester violence could spread beyond city, warns local MP Claudia Webb. Now, the next organisations running cover for the rioters in Leicester were the mainstream media, and they did it by imposing radio silence. It took them more than a week to report anything about this. According to the BBC, this was initially they were saying this is just a little bit of high spirits after a cricket match, the high spirits that got out of hand. Well, that was on the 28th of August, and so they report on the 16th of September, as at least a week after this really started getting serious. East Leicester disorder leads to 27 arrests. Who could be causing the disorder? Well, look at that. Just a picture of some policemen. A total of 27 people have been arrested in relation to a series of disturbances in East Leicester. And was it just the BBC? No, it wasn't. And here's from the Mirror. Huge brawl breaks out in UK street as mob throw punches after India versus Pakistan cricket match. So maybe it was all about sport. And Gavin, I hear you cry as with one voice, but surely we have our own ethnic English hooligans who are causing disruption on the street. Surely, you say, they deserve to be dragged out into the town square, strapped over a barrel and given a dozen for the gaiety and refreshment of the nation? Absolutely, I agree with you. But English football fans, they don't blame the police for allowing them to go at each other. When a Millwall fan wakes up from a damn good kicking he's had from a Liverpool fan with his teeth strewn all over the pavement, he doesn't say it's all the police's fault, I blame the police for the disorder. He says no, I may have a Liverpool boot print on my face, but I didn't get a kicking, and what's more, next time we face Liverpool, we're going to give Liverpool a kicking in revenge for the kicking we didn't get this time. But as you will see, that is not the attitude of the Hindu and Muslim rioters, which again goes to show how bad circumstances will get for them once they are allowed to stew in their own juice, as I think they will be. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the press running PR cover simply by ignoring this, by making out it's a little bit of disorder. It happened in the street. Oh, those Leicester streets, it's enough to make anyone riot. Okay, and what about conservative sources? Well, here's The Spectator. This is a conservative publication. Why is violence breaking out in Leicester? So it's violence breaking out in Leicester. Just what is going on in Leicester? Last night, violence broke out in the city after hundreds of young men in COVID masks and balaclavas took to the streets as part of an unplanned protest, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de. And he goes on to say at the end of it, we can only hope for Leicester's sake that there is no more violence again tonight. Pretty anodyne stuff. And a few days later, the same journalist goes on to say, is the violence in Leicester spreading? So it's violence in Leicester. Is it spreading? Maybe it's not just Leicester. And yes, there he is in Birmingham. And again, he goes on right at the end to say, let's hope that the disorder comes to an end soon. Now, I should say, I don't want to see blood in the streets. I don't want to see people inflicting cruelty on each other. I have no wish to inflict harm on anyone. Don't care what their background is. But that said, now that this has happened, it provides a really wonderful, fantastic and welcome illustration of why it will be so easy, why victory, winning will be so easy for us. Because when the populations separate out, the invader areas will be really congested, unlivable, uninhabitable war zones. And this is a good illustration of how that will happen. It also provides me with a very nice, neat little opportunity to provide video 3 in this 3-video series. And the Conservative news sources go on further. What about Brendan O'Neill? I think the impression I have is that he's often wheeled out as a radical contrarian with some Conservative sympathies. And his view is it's all about Hindu phobia. That's another phobia that we have to add to the list. When are we going to talk about Hindu phobia? Britain's woke elites have given a green light to anti-Hindu bigotry. So maybe he means me as well. I don't know. No, just in case you think I favour one side over the other, no, I can claim to have complete impartiality. In Leicester, no less, I was approached a few years ago by a Hindu group, Hindu Indians in Leicester, wanting me to help them resist a mosque planning application. And they came and I said, are you serious about this? I don't want to do the work and then to have you change your mind, and then all my unpaid work has been for nothing. And they were fulsome. They were adamant. Oh yes, they were serious. And then at the last minute they said, oh no, we've changed our minds. And the apology was even more grovelling than the initial promise had been emphatic. And then they came back to me again and said, no, we've changed our minds again. We really want you to do it. And I said, you've got to be serious this time. Are you serious? Absolutely. We're completely serious now. We want to see this through. And again, at the last minute, they backed out. And the grovelling apology was even more grovelling this time. And they came back a third time and said, this time we are serious. We absolutely guarantee you we need to go through with this. We need your help. And so I did all the work all over again. And then they came back to me and said, oh, we haven't got the courage to go through with you. We're pulling out at the last minute. And if you thought the first 2 apologies were grovelling, the third one was ultra grovelling. The most grovelling piece of text I've ever seen. So I have equal regard for both Muslim and Hindu populations in Leicester. I can claim complete impartiality. Perhaps unlike Brendan O'Neill, who appears to be taking sides, but perhaps like the BBC, who are willing to do anything to run cover for both groups. And this is a delicious article, Leicester, Why the Violent Unrest Was Surprising to Many. It says nothing. What it's really, it's a puff piece for those immigrant groups, Hindu and Muslim groups, and you can read it for yourself. That doesn't say anything except how great those Muslim and Hindu groups that came to Britain are, and how much they brought us, we couldn't drag ourselves up by the bootstraps after World War II. They had to come over and help us and enrich us with all their vibrant, bustling diversity and festivals. The sort of quote is, many people whose lives had been disrupted by partition, i.e. the bad English, heeded calls from their former colonial ruler to help rebuild the UK and start new lives. Isn't that nice? It just goes on and on and on like that. And it gets worse. We have even the police getting on, doing a little bit of PR. Here's appeals Leicestershire Live, appeals for calm and end to violence after days of unrest in Leicester. And what you had was temporary Assistant Chief Constable Adam Streets saying, now is the time for calm. And what he said, we have got a really proud history of being one of the most diverse cities in the country and strong community cohesion. Yeah, that bad grammar betrays his lack of meaning, I think. What I don't want to see is an escalation of these events that seek to undermine that. So the problem with these riots is not that it creates harm on the street, and certainly not that it displays complete contempt for the host ethnic British population, but that the escalation might undermine the fact that Leicester has a diverse city. I think it emphasises how diverse Leicester is myself. And then we go on a little further. There's another policeman. This gentleman you might have seen something of. He is the acting or temporary chief constable. I think his name is Rob Nixon. And this is the BBC. Leicester disorder, not exclusively Hindus and Muslims. Police. This looks like not totally PR, but a little bit of PR, I think. Actually, what we know is that this isn't representative of all Hindus. It isn't representative of all the Muslims. You remember the tiny minority excuse that's been trundled out every time? There it is. In fact, it's a small collection of individuals who are connected with those faiths, but not exclusively, because some people that have come to our attention have been linked with the Christian faith. I think that sounds like it's hinting that it was ethnic British people. I suspect there might have been a few Christian Indians. So I'm trying to encourage people to move away from the idea that this is solely about the clash of two religions and faiths. Yeah, good luck with that. And what he says it's about is some people, Mr. Nixon said, were becoming, this is a policeman talking, okay? Sorry, a chief constable talking. Some people were becoming increasingly disconnected from traditional community networks within the city, but increasingly connected with equally disconnected young people in other cities. Okay, if you can make head or tail of that, then translate it in the comments, please. The police's job is to stamp out crime. If they want to preserve community cohesion, they need to crack the heads of rioters. And if it turns to looting, they need to break out the live ammo. That is how you stamp on disorder. That is how you enforce community cohesion. And that, incidentally, is the police's job. So not to enforce community cohesion, but to stamp on crime and disorder. And yet another PR function which the likes of you and me, that is the ethnic British, formed was to form a common enemy against whom those two groups, the Hindus and Muslims of Leicester, can unite. So you see them there. That's the leaders of Leicester's Muslim and Hindu communities. There you are. And what do they say? Our two faiths have lived harmoniously in this wonderful city for over half a century. We arrived in the city together. We faced the same challenges together. We fought off racist haters together and collectively made this city a beacon of diversity and community cohesion. So they did us all a favour by fighting off the racist haters and replacing racist hatred with a beacon of diversity and community cohesion. And well, we've seen the evidence of that. Not one word of apology, not one word of admission as to what they've done. You would think it would be appropriate for them, as they're standing there and they have the UK's press in front of them and they're going to make their statement, you would have thought they might have had the sense to do a little bit of bridge building and to say, we're really sorry, this should not have happened whilst you were mourning your Queen, and there were so many police getting seconded down to London for such a big operation whilst 250,000 people were queuing all night to file past the Queen lying in state. We're really sorry we did that. We're going to make amends for it, and here's what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. No, they told us that they'd done us a favour by uniting against the racist haters. I think that's you and me. How do you feel about that? So that is point one. When the populations separate out, if the state authority falls over and then the welfare state falls over and then there is no state rule and different populations separate out, gathering around their own self-made, self-governing forms of law, but hardening the ethnic and racial divisions or the separation, then those populations in Leicester, they will no longer have all those organs of state, those institutions of authority running PR cover for them, mollycoddling them, making excuses, praising them, telling them what a wonderful contribution they've made, how it far outweighs anything they've done, and in fact what they've done is something we can easily ignore. That won't happen anymore. They will be forced to stew in their own juice. They're not going to get praise for that when the two populations have separated out. Point number two is the seriousness of the conflict that was involved, and to go through that, to look at that, I want to go through the next story. This is the Independent. Now, don't be under any illusion. Had the British authorities not been around, that conflict would have escalated to the form it took during partition in about 1947, 1948, when Hindus and Muslims were sending trainloads of corpses across the border to each other in retaliation, as a form of retaliation and terror. And here's just a little hint of that. Leicester residents scared to go out due to Hindu-Muslim clashes as tensions spread to Birmingham, so they're scared to go out. Community leaders fear religious tensions could spread nationwide after a huge crowd of masked men filmed outside Hindu temple. So that sounds pretty scary stuff. And how are they going to keep order for themselves once we've withdrawn from their areas? And this goes further. I'll go on to the next story. And this one, that's from the India Today. And their man on the spot in Leicester, what he said is, he was so scared is a bit of an understatement. If your house, this is a Hindu man talking, if your house was under attack when somebody's going to knock your door down and people are walking around on the street shouting Allahu Akbar, you would be petrified. Anybody would be petrified. And that is a feature of these riots. There is no meeting of minds. You're getting some community leaders coming forward and talking about unity and how they need to get rid of division. But in the press, this is settling out strictly along ethnic lines, the division within Leicester. It's not going to go away. It will recur. And finally, you see it has started to spread. I don't know if it's gone quiet now, but it could easily flare up again. Leicester violence spreads to Birmingham. Fireworks thrown at cops, thrown at the policemen. What's the point of that? As 200-strong mob surrounds Hindu temple. I think that's because the people who are rioting, they actually want the police out of the way so they can just go at each other. My point here, this point number 2, is how serious the rioting could have got, how serious the violence could have got in a very congested urban area, and how bad I think it will get once the white British or the English authority is lifted, when the populations separate out. Just think how bad it will get in those areas. What I'd like you to do is, if you dare, go to a heavily enriched area of the UK. There are loads of them. Just walk around and ask yourself, where are the sources of civil order? Where are the sources of wealth creation? And shops and takeaway pizza joints, those are not the sources of wealth creation. Where are the services? Where are where are the indigenous fire services, police services, ambulance services? How will order be maintained? How will any kind of basic prosperity be maintained? How will disaster be dealt with? How will accidents be dealt with? Just walk around, and then if you're not brave enough, and I certainly don't blame you, if you don't want to take the risk of walking around a heavily enriched area, just imagine it. Look on YouTube. There are plenty of videos of people walking around enriched areas, and then imagine you have that enriched area suddenly flaring up into really internecine communal violence. And then ask yourself, how long will that area remain livable? How long before it becomes so unlivable that people are desperate to get out, and they suddenly find that actually India isn't such a bad place to live? I don't think it is, particularly if it is your ethnic homeland. And how long will that be? I think a few months, 2-3 months, things will go downhill so fast. People they won't really have much option but to get out of their own isolated, uninhabitable areas, because of the conflicts they've made, and because of they simply don't like or can't live while stewing in their own juice. Now, the third point is that it is only the British authorities that are preventing that. It is the thin blue line, if you like, of mainly English ethnic British police who are trying to protect these people from themselves, and being blamed for it as well. That they are so relied upon and so taken for granted that these rioting Hindu and Muslim populations, they blame the police. They say these riots, this disorder, this violence, this is not our fault, it is the fault of the police. Nowhere have you seen leaders coming forward and taking responsibility. Everyone else is to blame, and it's mainly the police. And my point is, okay, what happens if those police are taken away? What happens then? How bad will it get? The lid will come off, and that violence then, I think, will get very bad. I want to show you a little bit of press coverage to give you an illustration of what I mean. So if we go to this next story, what you have here, this is a story in The Guardian. Police call for calm after serious disorder breaks out in Leicester. Okay, there's all euphemism. But if I go down to this story, there's a fellow called Majid Freeman. He is said to be a community organizer in the area, and he said a gathering of young Muslims in the city was in response to the impromptu march. Freeman added, "That's when the Muslim community came out and said, we can't trust the police. We're going to defend our community ourselves." And similarly, what you had in Leicester's Hindu community, this lady, Drishti May, what she said is, it's the Hindu community that's being targeted, a first-generation migrant community. May said, claiming Hindu families were being harassed by some Muslims in the city. They feel threatened and attacked, she added, saying the police were failing to protect property, people and places of worship. We do have a right to protect ourselves. So that again, this is a thread that runs through these riots, that the police are consistently getting blamed for this. It's the police's fault. No, it's the rioters' fault. You should take responsibility. That inability to take responsibility, that almost pre-adolescent reliance upon the authority of the police to intervene and protect you from yourselves, that is an indication of how bad it will get, how it will go off the leash when the police are pulled out, when the populations separate out, as I think will happen. And the next one, this is a BBC article. Leicester disorder fear lingers among city's Muslims and Hindus. And I'll just go down to the quote that I want to refer to. Majid Freeman, a local fundraiser for causes in the Middle East, I wonder which causes they are, said he is angry about what he regards as a lack of police action. It was a riot waiting to happen. So again, you see that it was just waiting to happen, and the police let it. He said there were many questions amongst the community about the police response to the protest on Saturday. So the point I'm making, apart from the ingratitude and lack of responsibility, it is again this taking for granted of the role of the British authorities, who are there to protect them from themselves and to be blamed for problems that these populations cause for themselves. And this one finally, Leicester disorder women call for unity over city unrest. And if I go down, what you'll see, police were criticised for not arresting people at the scene of last weekend's disorder, but Mr Nixon has previously said doing so would have taken officers off the streets. Yeah, and also a lot of police from around the country were seconded down in London because there was a big event taking place there. And it was assumed that everyone would pay respect during the time of the Queen's funeral, how wrong the police were. And yet the police are to blame for the British police are to blame for these riots. And this is point number 3. When the British police are no longer there, the lid will come off, and it won't just be about watermelon fights. These people will use the knives that were seen being carried around during these riots. This violence will get an awful lot worse. It won't stop. It will in a lot of cases be fighting to the death with broken bottles, house bricks, and iron bars. You can't live, people can't live under such circumstances. It will become much more tempting for people to return to their lands of ancestral origin. And this is my third video in this series of 3 videos about why winning will be easy. Just to spell out what I think is going to happen, or what I've spelled out so far. Societies like ours, big state welfare state societies like ours, They simply can't survive. There's no point getting angry, getting ideological. No, don't sign up to any ideology. It doesn't do you any good. It turns good people cruel, and it turns cruel people into monsters. Avoid ideology. You don't need it, and you don't need it in this situation. Societies like this simply don't work. They fall over. This society, this system will fall over. It will go broke. You have seen the economic problems over the last week. The Bank of England having to intervene. Pension funds were about to go bust, and they would have dragged down the banks with them. Then the whole economy would have gone broke. The whole economy would have fallen over, and so the Bank of England had to print up £65 billion to spend to put to try and stave off a crisis. So one day 65 billion is not going to be enough. The Bank of England won't be able to print enough to get us out of our troubles. Then the economy will fall over, and then when that happens, the welfare state will fall over. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but if there's no money to pay for the welfare state won't get paid for, and the welfare state will close, including hospitals shutting their doors. And then people will say, right, there's no reason to support the state authority anymore. The only reason is because it provides free stuff for us. Once that's over, the social contract ends. We're not going to submit to state authority. State authority will come to a close. People will still need law. People will gather together amongst themselves to submit themselves to law, because people need to do that in order to live safely and in order to be able to continue to trade. And people will do that on an as you go voting with your feet basis, joining a club. And when that happens, the populations will separate hard. Who would join a system that allowed those Hindu or Muslim populations of Leicester to join? No one wants anything to do with it. No one wants that. You have no reason to want that in your area, to want that kind of violence and criminality in your area. No one will pay extra simply for the privilege of having that inflicted on them. The populations will separate out, and you will find areas like East Leicester, those Hindu Muslim areas of Leicester, they will find themselves cut off from the British welfare state, cut off from the British authorities, cut off from British sources of civil society, sources of wealth creation, and they will be submerged in their own civil conflict. It will become unlivable, very and hellish, fast, poverty-stricken, fast. And at that point, it will be simple, straightforward, to get those people to return to their own lands of ancestral origin, which will suddenly look a lot more attractive. They won't need to be paid a free airfare, maybe, and gradually those invader areas will become depopulated, and we will then be able to take them back. Maybe rich businessmen buying them up again, for rich English business people buying them up again, piece by piece. And that is how I think we will be able to retake England, our own homeland. We are an old nation. We have attached to our own land. We have a right to it. We have a right to claim it. We have a right to resist the invasion. We have a right to reverse the invasion that is going on. The key thing is to be able to do it in a way that is not violent and avoids atrocity and avoids civil war. We have the right. We have the right to do it in a peaceful way. And what I'm saying here is that it will be easy. And the events of Leicester show that once the populations are separated out, the conditions for invader populations will become impossible, intolerable, fast, within a few months, and then it will be quite an easy matter for them to leave, to persuade them to go consensually. And right on cue, the riots in Leicester have illustrated my point for me. Thank you very much. So this is the third and final in this little series of 3 videos, why victory will be easy. Thank you.